Stop whining, start elevating. For many listening to this will be a life-changing concept, as it was for me when I learned the mindset behind this and how to practice this. We'll talk about whining from two different perspectives, one from a personal perspective and one from a leadership perspective. Let's start with the personal perspective. Your friends and family aren't your therapist. So if you are complaining, venting, blaming, making excuses to your friends and family members, that serves no purpose. And not only is it bad for you, it's bad for them. If you look up studies on venting, you'll see that it's bad for the person who is doing the venting. I'm calling it whining. It's bad for the person who is whining because they're reliving a bad situation without a solution and essentially saying they're powerless over their situation. And it's bad for the receiver, meaning the person you're whining to, because they're reliving your bad situation with no solution. There's a huge difference between talking about your problems, whining, versus explaining your situation and seeking solutions. Now, I am not judging you or anyone else who is currently whining, because I did it myself at one point in my life until I didn't, until I made a decision to learn much better tools to handle situations in my life personally and professionally. The reason why people whine is not because they're bad people, not because they have character issues. It's because they don't have the proper tools to deal with the situation, different situations that life brings them personally and professionally. So I'm going to share with you some tools today. And I'm also going to, first I'll share with you two of my favorite quotes on whining and complaining. This is from Dr. Marshall Goldsmith. He's one of the top executive coaches in the world. He's a PhD psychologist. He advises Ford Motor Company, Navy admirals, the Mayo Clinic. Dr. Goldsmith says, the best CEOs don't complain. I've known Alan Mulally, who was the CEO of Ford Motor Company, and Francis Hesselbein, the CEO of the Girl Scouts, for over 30 years. I've never heard them whine. I've never heard them complain. I've never heard them say, poor me. Never. They say, I am up. I'm positive. Life is good. Let's make the best of every day. Here's a quote from Ingvar Kamprad, founder of IKEA. The strong person is always positive and moves forward. Let's talk about some of my favorite tools that I've collected over the years in terms of dealing with the challenges and problems that life will inevitably bring us. The first one, and this is my favorite, is called Relentless Solution by Dr. Jason Selk. He wrote a book by the same name, Relentless Solution Focus, which I highly recommend. I believe every man, woman, and child should read this book. The Relentless Solution Focus tool is this: to go from problem to solution in 60 seconds or less. Just think of one thing you can do to solve the problem that you're facing. One thing. That's all you need to do. One thing. And then take some small action. Move just an inch forward. That's relentless solution focus. Okay, that's mental toughness in the eyes of Dr. Selk and myself, to have a relentless solution focus. The second tool is E plus R equals O. I learned this from Jack Canfield. He wrote a book called The Success Principles. It's in this book. He learned it from a gentleman named Dr. Robert Resnick, a psychologist. And it's very simple. E equals the event plus R equals your response plus R equals O, outcome. The R is your response. The E is the event. The O is the outcome. And essentially what he's saying is you get to choose your response. It's not the event that determines your circumstances. It's the response that you choose. And again, you could find this tool in the book, The Success Principles by Jack Canfield. The third tool is I Can Handle It by Dr. Susan Jeffers. She wrote a book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And she says the root of all fear in life is I can't handle it, whether it's a fear about our health, a fear about losing someone in a relationship, a fear of losing our job, a fear of losing a sporting event. The root of all fear is I can't handle it. The tool or the antidote to this is I can handle it. That's the root of all self-confidence. A fourth tool is compared to what mentality. I learned this from Brian Kane, a top mental performance coach. He's got a great daily podcast. You can find it on Spotify, iTunes, and he gives daily advice, very short daily advice, which I highly recommend. Mental Performance Daily. And Brian talks about having a compared to what mentality. So you look at your situation and you say, well, compared to what? And you think, well, there's always someone who has it worse. No matter how bad we may have it in the moment, there's pretty much always someone who has it worse. So I use that off compared to what? When I'm going through something, well, compared to what? If work is challenging for me, or I'm having business challenges, I always go back and think compared to what? Compared to my grandfather, Albert Madden, who worked in a coal mine, the same coal mine his grandfather worked in. That's hard. My situation compared to that is nothing in terms of business. Compared to what? My grandfather, Ross Garantino, worked the overnight shift in a grocery store, worked multiple jobs to support his family. Okay. Compared to what? My situation compared to that, easy. I think compared to what? If I'm in some sort of physical pain or doing a difficult workout, well, compared to what? Compared to someone who may be in a wheelchair or someone who can't get out of bed. My situation is nothing compared to that. So it's one of my favorite mindsets, compared to what. And then the fifth tool I'll give you is what Jack Canfield calls the rampage of appreciation. He learned this from, I believe, Esther Hicks. You take 60 seconds, 5 minutes, and you just go on a rampage of gratitude in your life. Everything you look around, or no matter where you're at, and you appreciate what you have. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. I appreciate my computer where I can do this on. I appreciate my office. I appreciate the park outside where I go for a walk. I appreciate the food I had today. You just go down the list and you just appreciate for 60 seconds or a few minutes. There's 5 tools, okay, that you can use instead of whining. Now, if you have a serious problem, if you have a serious challenge, you have a mental health issue, you've lost a loved one, you've lost your job, you have a sick family member, these are serious issues. And I'm not making light of these. Talk to a professional if you need to. Talk to a therapist, talk to your doctor, talk to a counselor, talk to a spiritual advisor, talk to a trusted friend or family member. What I'm not saying is hold everything inside. When you have real challenges, real issues, talk to somebody about it. Again, whether it's a paid expert or a friend or family member that you trust, but go in there with that relentless solution focus that I'm here to talk about solutions. I'm here to figure out what's one thing I can do to move forward. What do you think I could do to improve my situation? What should I do? I'm not sure what I should do. You're going in there again with that relentless solution focus, but you're doing it in a manner that you're not burdening close friends and family members with your problems all the time. The things that are trivial, right? For those things, we need to have tools, which I shared a collection of tools with you. 5 of my favorite tools. There's others out there, but there are 5 of my favorites. So that's whining when it comes to personally when you're whining. And there's some solutions, some tools, some things to do that are much more effective. Let's talk about whining in terms of leadership. If you're in a leadership position, you're a parent, you're a CEO of a company, you're a school teacher, you're a coach of a sports team, you lead a nonprofit, you're in a leadership position. When I'm talking about whining, what I'm talking about here is you are asking someone to improve their performance and or attitude in a way that there are no consequences. All you're doing is whining at them. Okay. And we don't respect leaders who whine. Okay. Whether it's whining about their own personal problems, which we covered, which we should never do as a leader, and or whining at someone to improve. Our child's misbehaving. All right. We're whining at them to stop, but there's no consequences. We whined about this dozens of times with no consequences. Okay. That's whining when it comes to leadership. That is ineffective. Now, what I'll do is now I'll share with you some better ways to lead, more effective ways to serve the people that you want to serve the most, whether it's your children, your employees, the players on your sports team, members of your nonprofit group. How can we effectively help them improve their attitude and or performance? Well, first I'll share with you a few quotes on difficult conversations, how to have these conversations in a way that's effective instead of just whining at people. Here's a quote from Keith Cunningham. He's known as the chairman of the board. He's a successful businessman and successful business consultant and coach. Keith Cunningham says, the reason we hesitate to have the hard conversations is because we don't care enough. If we truly cared enough, you would say what needs to be said. After all, how else are they going to improve and maximize their potential? Let me remind you that nothing can change until the unsaid is spoken. Here's a quote from Tim Ferriss, wrote a book called Tools of Titans, several other bestsellers. He's got a great podcast. Tim says, a person's success in life can visually be measured by the number of uncomfortable conversations he or she is willing to have. And here's a quote by Kevin Kelly, wrote one of my all-time favorite books, Excellent Advice for Living. It's a book of quotes and advice for life and all aspects of our life. Kevin says, your growth as a mature being is measured by the number of uncomfortable conversations you are willing to have. So let's talk about the mindset on how to have effective conversations to help people raise their standards of attitude or performance, and also exactly how to have these conversations. So the mindset shift is this. It's very simple. If you're not being honest with people and you're not setting high standards, you are actually hurting them and not helping them. When we are not honest with the people that we've been tasked to lead, we are actually hurting them, not helping them. It all comes down to our unnecessary fears that we're going to hurt people's feelings, or they're going to quit, or they're going to leave the relationship, or they're going to check out, or they're going to hate us. All these irrational fears that almost never come true. These things almost never happen, especially when you use a proper framework to have a conversation with, which I'm about to share with you. So these are all these irrational fears. We have to understand that we're not honest with people. We're not giving them an opportunity to learn and grow. Right? We're actually robbing them of the opportunity to learn and grow. And also, think back to the people that cared about you the most, that you respected and admired, that really served you and helped you grow as a person. They were the ones who were the most honest with you, whether it was a school teacher, a family member, a boss at work. They were the ones who were most honest with you about where you could improve in terms of attitude or performance. They're the ones who cared the most. And they're also the ones that we respect and appreciate the most. So my challenge to you is to be that person. How do we have these difficult conversations? I call them heroic conversations because they're only difficult if you make them. And the more you do them, the easier it gets. It's a 3-step process. I call it catch, challenge, cross-examine. So if you need to have a difficult conversation, better known as a heroic conversation, the first thing you want to do with this person is catch them doing something right. And you do this one-on-one. We always try to do this one-on-one. Always let people keep their dignity by doing it one-on-one. Praise in public, criticize in private, as the old saying goes. The first thing we want to do is catch them doing something right. I say catch them doing 3 things right. Tell them 3 things that they're doing well, 3 great things about them, 3 of their strengths, 3 of their great traits. Okay. Number 2 is challenge them. That's the second C. Challenge them on one thing and one thing only that they need to do better in terms of attitude and performance, and give them an objective, specific example of when they weren't doing that. Okay. When they weren't living up to a standard of attitude or performance. Okay. Give them an objective example. Only tell them one thing. Don't overload them by telling them 2 or 3 things they need to improve. One thing and one thing only. The third C is cross examine. Ask them why this is happening. Say to them, help me understand why this is happening so I can help you to improve it. Help me understand why. Okay. So now we're collaborating on this. Okay. And have them explain why it's happening. All right. So they can take you through their thought process and what's going on here. Then ask them what they think they could do to improve this. Now, I would say, in my experience, after having thousands of these type of conversations, 8 times out of 10, people know what they need to do. They're just not doing it. Right? They know what they need to do to improve. They just need someone to challenge them to do it. 2 times out of 10, they don't know. And that's where you come in to say, well, let's figure this out, what you need to do to improve this. Lastly, now here's where we go from whining to leading. You have to set a deadline, a follow-up conversation you're going to have about this and or consequences if this doesn't improve. The person has to understand there's consequences to this and or there will be a follow-up conversation in a few days or a week. I say no more than a month, but the sooner the better, that there's a follow-up here, I am serious about this. You have to improve this. That's how you go from whining to leading. How do you go from whining to solutions and success and to elevating, which is the theme of this? Really, what we're talking about is going from whining to elevating. Okay. Going from whining personally to elevating your situation and yourself through the tools we talked about, through going to trusted advisors such as therapists, coaches, mentors, respected friends and family members, elevating yourself here. Okay. Instead of whining and staying in the mud. Okay. In terms of leadership, we go from whining to elevating by elevating the person we're leading to improve, right? To raise their standards of attitude or performance. My challenge to you is to think about where you are whining personally or as a leader. Okay. And apply one or all the 5 tools personally in terms of going from whining to elevating yourself. And also change your mindset as a leader and go from whining to elevating with the mindset shift and then a heroic coaching conversation of catching, challenging, and cross-examining. I wish you success and happiness, and I wish you elevation in all areas of your life.